Isaiah chapter 2. In the last chapter, Isaiah wrote about the wickedness of Judah and the filthiness of Jerusalem, and how these places that had been filled with people who cared about the Lord and wanted to follow His ways, these places that Isaiah says were filled with righteousness are now filled with wickedness. And the Lord is going to do something about that. And this is talking about immediately the captivity in Babylon that's going to happen. And what are you doing? You can read where we are. And that is going to happen during the time of Isaiah's writing. So over the course of reading this book, you're going to read about God telling the people that they're going to be defeated, that they're going to be hauled off into slavery, that their land is going to be taken away from them, and it's happening. And there's also going to be massive amounts here that are talking about what Jesus is going to do and what He's going to do when He comes back. So, the word that Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the latter days. Okay, the latter days. That means the end times. Guess what? That's these days. That's the day that you and I are living in right now. And so this is coming in our future. It could even happen in our lifetime. Who's to say? It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established as the highest of the mountains. Question. Do you think Isaiah means this literally? And again, Isaiah is speaking for the Lord here. He says, this is what God says. Do you think that God is speaking literally? That the mountain that the house of the Lord is on will become the tallest mountain? So that's one. Do you think He's being literal here? Or two, do you think that this is more a symbol of how important that place is going to become? So, do you think it's literally going to be the tallest? Or do you think that it's going to figuratively become the most impressive, the most important, right? So think about that. Which one of these is it? As we go through, and you're cheating because you know the Lord. So, the house of the Lord will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations will flow to it, and many peoples. Now, when it says many here, it means absolutely everybody, with perhaps a few exceptions. Many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. Paul said, many of those who didn't believe died in the desert, right? You know how many died in the desert who didn't believe? The entire generation except for 2 people, right? So when Paul said many, he was talking about absolutely everyone except 2 people. And here, when it says that many people will come up to the house of the Lord and they'll say to each other, hey, let's go to the temple. That's probably going to be almost everybody. In fact, the people who decide not to go are going to have a problem. Okay, that He may teach us His ways. Isn't that interesting? That's exactly why you guys are here today, so that God can teach you His ways. So, you guys don't even have to leave the country. And that we may walk in His paths. So walking in His path, simple. You're following Him. Follow the Lord. 4, out of Zion. Ooh, Zion. That's an actual place. What is Zion? It is the area around a mountain. What mountain is that? You don't even get to guess. It's Mount Zion, obviously. So yes, out of Zion, which is a literal mountain today, will go the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So just in case you didn't know where Mount Zion is, it's in the area of Jerusalem, the city.
Just fell off.
That's okay. It was already broken. Just keep a hold of it and keep track of it, and I'll put it away with it. I need some duct tape. He shall judge between the nations. Judging between the nations here means that God is going to rule over them. He's going to be the decider. I don't know if you were, yeah, I'm a decider. That was like the catchphrase of our previous president, George Bush. And God is going to be the decider here. And he shall decide disputes for many peoples. Again, many, probably pretty much everybody. Peoples is groups of people. And they shall hear, this is interesting, they, right, the people that God is ruling over, get this. Think about this, because this is in our future. This is not something that happened in the past. But think about how weird this is. It says that they will reshape their swords into plows. I would believe you if this was talking about something that happened in the past. But doesn't it seem weird that there's an abundance of swords in the future? Like seriously, who fights with a sword anymore? But get this.
But sometimes we fight with guns.
Think about what's going on in the world right before these things happen. With the beast, with Satan running loose on the earth, with massive portions of the population dying, with huge areas of the world being destroyed by what is most likely an exchange of nuclear weapons. There's a saying, we bombed them into the Stone Age, which means that we destroyed every piece of technology they have. They couldn't build anything. In World War II, Germany could not build tanks and airplanes anymore by the end of the war because we literally bombed them out of the ability to do it.
Yeah, we nuked them.
And in those days, society is going to crumble. And you won't have access to a gun and bullets. You will know a guy that knows how to bang a piece of metal into the shape of a sword. He's going to put it in your hand, and you're going to use it to fight your battles with. That's what's going. Now, when I say you, I don't mean any of you, because we're going to be with the Lord. But you're going to watch these idiots doing this stuff. And I tell you, I would rather be watching than participating in what's going on here, because it's really dumb. And really tragic, honestly, because people are going to have to use those swords to defend their families from the really crazy people, which is the majority. So, they're going to have all these swords, actual literal swords, I believe. Because how do you beat a figurative sword into an actual plow, right? And then, if you're beating a figurative sword into a figurative plow, what are you even doing? Right? It doesn't make any sense. You're not going to plow a field with that. So, they will literally reshape actual swords. Look at how desperate they were. That this is what they have available. This is what they have in abundance. Swords and spears. Actual swords and spears. This is the future too. Don't tear that. Put it down. Stop touching it. Yeah, okay. Huh? Yeah, who's to say? They got bombed into the Stone Age, my friend. Hard to use a bow and arrow in thick darkness, by the way. So, where was I? They will beat their swords into plows, their spears into pruning hooks. Now, a pruning hook is a simple tool. You use it to cut branches off of a tree, right? You just... So again, they got lots of swords and spears. They're going to have no use for them because nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore for 1,000 years. But we'll get into that later. There's going to be one last war after this. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. I think that this passage is talking about the millennium, the 1,000-year rule of Jesus on the earth. And why do I say that? Because the Bible makes it very clear that Jesus is going to come back He's going to destroy his enemies. He's going to rule on the earth for 1,000 years. And then there's going to be a rebellion when Satan is let loose to let people follow him in one last chance to give people a choice who you're literally going to follow. And people are going to follow him. And they're going to attack the city of the Lord, right? Which is on the earth here. And these people that have turned all their swords into plows and their spears into pruning hooks and don't learn how to fight anymore are going to be attacked by people that want to follow the alternative,
Satan.
that want to do the other thing
Satan.
and follow the bad guy, the fallen angel, Satan. And it says that Jesus is going to destroy those people himself.
Good.
So, these people who don't learn how to fight anymore, they don't learn how to protect themselves, Jesus is going to protect them. Until that day, feel free to own swords, guns, whatever you need to protect yourself, because it takes too long for the police to show up. Now, for you have rejected your people, the house of Jacob, he says to God. So he says, God, you have rejected us right now. But there's coming a day where God's going to come and rescue the people and teach them the right way. Because they are full of things from the east and of fortune tellers like the Philistines. What are these fortune tellers? These are occultic people. They talk to spirits. And the Bible teaches very clearly that's not something you should do. Because the spirits that are floating around are not the spirits of Grandpa and Grandma or anybody like that. It's the lying spirits of demons and fallen angels. So, you don't want to mess with that. And he says here God has rejected the people because they're full of this Eastern religion. They're full of occultism, talking to the bad spirits. And they make deals with the children of foreigners. Their land is filled with silver and gold. There's no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses, and there's no end to their chariots. Why is this a bad thing? Is it bad to be rich? No. The Bible teaches very clearly it's not necessarily a bad thing to be rich. How did you get those riches, though? These people, the people of Israel at this time that's being talked about, are rich because of the deals they've made with their neighbors. Okay, that in itself, not a bad thing. But God told them something when he took them out of Egypt. He said, never go back to Egypt to buy horses, to buy chariots, and your leader must never build up huge amounts of gold or silver or horses or wives. And every single one of those commands was immediately ignored by the people the first chance they got. Because people like gold and silver and horses and chariots and wives. Right? So, they bow down to the work of their hands, idol worship, to what their own fingers have made. Isn't it ridiculous to build something and then expect it to fix your life? To be smarter than you? How dumb is that? To build something with your hands because it can't shape itself. To expect it to lift you up, but you carry it around.
Why would anybody do that? It's just
Because it's the alternative to the Lord. And if you want to hide from God, you have to do it in a cow pie. Right? The only place to put your head is somewhere stupid if you're not going to follow the Lord. And it's sad. And the Lord finds it both ridiculous and tragic. Because people are dying because they've chosen these things. Okay. So man is brought low, and each one brought low. Do not forgive them. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust. From before the terror of the Lord. God is terrorizing the place, and the people are trying to squeeze in between boulders to escape from him, to bury themselves in the dirt, to escape from the presence of the Lord and from the splendor of his majesty. The haughty looks of man will be brought low, the proud looks, and the lofty pride of men will be humbled. And the Lord alone will be lifted up in that day, because the Lord of hosts has set a day against all that is proud and lifted up, against all that's lifted up, and it will be brought low. So, are you proud? Do you feel like you can stand on your own? Do you feel like you can fight against the Lord? You can go your own way and you don't need Him? Everyone that feels that way, and everything that makes people feel that way, hey, you're not following along, you're playing. So either close the book or go to where we are and stay there. Okay. Against all the cedars of Lebanon. There are trees in Lebanon that happen to be cedar. I don't know why God is angry with them. I feel like it might be referring to something else. But you know what? Those trees are going to burn, because the Bible talks about how all the trees get burned in the end times, right? It's one of those judgments. And all the green grass, remember? Those lofty and lifted up trees. Against all the oaks of Bashan, and against all the lofty mountains, and against all the uplifted hills and every high tower. Skyscrapers, right? Those are very high towers. And against every fortified wall, against all the ships of Tarshish. What is a ship of Tarshish? It is a type of ship that is built to cross the ocean. And that, why would you not just say ship? But we don't think about boats and ships in terms of how far they can go as much. It's not such a big deal to think of something that can cross the ocean. But again, there is a huge difference between something that can trade, from one town to another, and something that can go all the way from China to America to sell you all the plastic junk that we buy. So, the Lord is going to render those big... You know how big those ships are and how incredible they are? It's very rare for one of those to actually sink, or to have some kind of disaster happen to it. It's very rare. They're incredibly durable and well made, and they're reliable to carry things back and forth between the nations, between the continents. Tough. And the Lord is going to bring trouble to those as well, and you will definitely see that in the end days. And against all the beautiful craft, and the haughtiness of man will be humbled, and the lofty pride of men will be brought low. And the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. Exalted means lifted up.
Why the beautiful cliffs?
Hey, you're just babbling, bud. Just listen. Where was I? And the idols will utterly pass away. Interesting fact, Israel, the Jewish people, completely stopped being interested in idols after they came back from slavery in Babylon. Until then, you dig up the old houses of Jewish families, and you would find idols and signs of idol worship, even babies that were buried underneath the house as a way, killing the baby, as a way of worshiping these gods that were introduced to them by their neighbors. Disgusting, right? We do something even worse in America. We kill the babies for no reason at all, right? So we think that's gross that you would, put a baby in a pot and bury it underneath your house as some way, and it is, right? It's totally gross. God says, I never even considered asking someone to do that. It's horrible. And you know what abortion is. It's killing babies because they're just not convenient. Disgusting. It's horrible. Anyway, I don't want to get started on that. But the Lord is going to make us answer for that one day as a people. And I don't want to be around when that happens. So, the people will enter the caves of the rocks and the holes of the ground from before the terror of the Lord and from the splendor of His majesty when He rises to terrify the earth. This is This is God when he is done sitting around and being angry, and now he's doing something about it. Right? You ever make your dad really, really need to spank you, and then he's just like, this is happening. Right? You definitely don't want to push him to that point, because it's not comfortable. And the Lord terrifying the world with his anger that is unleashed because of the wrong things people are doing. Yes?
It says that in 2 spots that I can see, like right here and
Yeah,
right here.
it's right away. It's making it very obvious. People are going to be very terrified by what the Lord is doing, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to scare people. He wants people to know that he is angry, that it is time to stop. In that day, mankind will cast away their idols of silver and their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship. To the moles and to the bats they'll throw them. To enter the caverns of the rocks and the clefts of the cliffs from before the terror of the Lord, and from the splendor of his majesty when he rises to terrify the earth. Stop paying attention to man. Stop regarding man. Stop respecting people over the Lord, in whose nostrils is breath. For of what account is he? What does it mean that in his nostrils is breath? Our life is as strong as our lungs. Our life is as tough as our heart. And it is so easy, Noah, almost done. It's so easy for a man to die. We are made weak. And yet, to trust in a person over the Lord, stupidity. And the Lord is going to demonstrate what folly that is in that day. Okay, any questions?
No.
I didn't think there would be.